Welcome to a very special episode of Bucket List Coach Web Show Live. And we're talking the U.S. Air Force, baby. We'll be right back. All right. Rock and roll. How are you today?
I'm great. Heck of an intro, Cindy. That was awesome.
Yes. So thank you very much for being here. And I'm going to do a little intro on me. I've had this podcast since 2017. It started all about making the most of the dash and talking about people's career bucket list. And 5 years ago, coming up in November, will be 5 years that I've added aviation. So my aviation story started at Air Force. I lived near Travis Air Force Base when I was young, but 12, 13 minutes from Travis Air Force Base. The only 16-year-old kid that would lose her stuff when she seen that beautiful C-5 fly over. In 1986, I started working for Naval Civil Service. I worked on a nuclear submarine, and that is the very same year Topgun came out. So, and I've had some really great relationships, including Joseph and Cindy Dabano, and we're going to talk about them here in a little bit. But I am very grateful for you because my true love for aviation began with the Air Force. So I'm going to pop off for a little bit and go ahead and tell your aviation story, and I'll be back in about 1 minute.
All right. For me, it started, in the Air Force. It actually, ironically, started with the C-5 when I was a casual officer at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. But long before that, aviation for me was something that I don't know why I was initially drawn to it, but I was absolutely drawn to it from a very young age. So much so that I used to draw pictures of airplanes constantly, even back in kindergarten. I think the very first story I ever told was about Space Shuttle Challenger, which unfortunately we lost, but that was the earliest piece of writing that my parents were able to unearth for me. So something in me, and maybe even that accident, drew me to aviation as a whole. As I started to get older towards the end of middle school, I truly wanted to fly. And I remember asking my parents for a discovery flight in a small airplane at EYQ, which is unfortunately no longer around, down in Houston, Texas. And they said, no way. And I said, okay, well, it's really important to me. Like, what can I do? And I was a swimmer at the time. And my off event was the 200 freestyle. That was the one I didn't like. It's the one I didn't want to do. And my parents tried to make it an impossible situation. So they tried to tell me, hey, if you get an A time in the 200 freestyle, then we'll give you a discovery flight. And that was not supposed to be possible based on my current skill level. But man, I had something to shoot for at that point. And so I went out and did it in the very next swim meet. And they let me fly for the first time. And that was it. For me, I fell in love with it and ended up pursuing aviation for really up until now, to the rest of my career. Still doing it, still going.
So everybody that watches the show know that two things that I say: in thrust we trust, and number 2 is plane porn. So let's talk about all the amazing, beautiful machines that you've been on. It just, as a kid, and then as a pilot, like what's your whole story about that aviation story?
Absolutely. So, I mean, as a kid, pretty small stuff. Piper Warrior was what I started with. I'll tell you, for all of you out there who are just getting going on flying and who are thinking, man, I can fly these Cessnas and Pipers, but how could I ever fly an F-35? It's actually the opposite of what you think. I think the hardest airplanes out there are those small, unaugmented, single propeller aircraft and small rotary wing aircraft. And I think any test pilot will tell you that I'm not lying right now. If you can fly those, you can fly anything. As I grew up a little bit, I started to add retractable gear to the equation going through college. But at this point, I still wasn't sure that I was going to be able to truly go into the Air Force. I had eyesight to overcome. And it wasn't until the Air Force allowed laser surgery in 2003 that I was able to finally say, oh man, I might actually be able to be a pilot for the U.S. Air Force.
Wow. So tell my audience about that. I did not know about that fact.
So I went into college on an ROTC scholarship. So the Air Force paid for all of my university time. And even despite that, they had a hard ban on bad eyes. Bad eyesight there was no way around it. There was no waiver, no way around it. So I went into college on an ROTC scholarship, still expecting that I would end up being an engineer in the Air Force, not a pilot. And I was okay with that because I would at least be around airplanes. Well, February of 2003, I'll never forget this date. The Air Force released a memo that said, hey, we're willing to try PRK, the early laser surgery. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, this might actually be possible. So that was February of 03. By March of 03, I was on a surgeon's table getting PRK, as a 20-year-old, which was right on the threshold of possible for, when a surgeon will do that because your eyes keep changing. And then it was that spring that I was selected as a pilot. So, I mean, it was like the finest possible margin made a difference in my life to where I would have been an engineer and I would have been fine with that. I even considered going into the Air Force as a lawyer at one point to just be a part of it. But very happy that I ended up being on the flying side and have flown a lot of things since then.
So let's talk about the planes that you have flown so far.
Sure. So T6 in pilot training, that's very common. T-38 at the end of pilot training.
I love the T-38. That's
supersonic aircraft that I ever flew.
Yes.
And then my main aircraft was the F-15E, so the Strike Eagle. All my combat time is in the F-15E. I was flying out of Seymour Johnson. And that's an airplane that I'm back in right now, actually, and something that I will always hold right here. So the Strike Eagle is a beautiful bird. You don't get to see it a lot at air shows, unfortunately, because they're deployed all the time. I then switched to the F-35 and then the F-16 for the Thunderbird. So the primary aircraft that I've flown, with a evaluation qual and instructor and all that stuff, are the F-15E, F-16, and F-35. Those are the three I know the best. But when I was a test pilot, and particularly in test pilot school, I flew just about everything. I mean, they really put you through that diverse span of all things. So we flew World War II seaplanes like the HU-16. Okay. We flew MiGs. We flew French aircraft that were trainers called the Fouga Magister. We flew helicopters, multiple types. Some folks in the class actually got to fly the Goodyear blimp. I flew the Super Guppy. That's probably the most unique aircraft I've ever flown. That's the one that, for those who are not tracking, it's a B-29 fuselage that they added a huge bulb to the top of that goes all the way back that they used to transport rockets back in the space race, which is the reason that NASA won that space race, because the Russians were using trains and we were flying these makeshift airplanes around to move parts around the different manufacturing areas. So flew that. Got to fly the Orion capsule simulator when they were still trying to decide what that was going to look like from an interface perspective. I mean, I just very thankful to the test pilot school for the diversity of experience that it gives us. It's amazing. Wow,
that's fantastic. I mean, your aviation story is the ultimate career bucket list. And so how did your parents feel about it when you became a Thunderbird? I mean, that must have been pretty epic for them.
Pretty surprised, I think. I don't think at any point in my life that I said the words, I want to be a Thunderbird. It was never the plan, believe it or not.
What's the real story behind that?
So I was never the plan. I went into the Air Force. For me, it was really NASA that was my driving force, believe it or not. So, grew up in Houston, Texas, had, the influences around me were the manned space organization, right? And that's where NASA keeps their astronauts. And so those visits were the ones that really got to me. And as it started to become serious for me, as I started to try to decide what I was going to do with my life, I recognized that I wanted to go to space, and most of the astronauts that I met were either Navy or Air Force test pilots, especially back in that shuttle era. That was the draw. So I went into the Air Force not thinking about the Thunderbirds whatsoever, or weapons school for that matter. I was purely in the mindset of NASA. NASA means master's in engineering. That means undergrad in engineering, and that means test pilot school. And so that's what I have to do. And so I went into the Air Force with that mindset. And that kind of drove me all the way through. The Thunderbirds came way later. 18 years later in life was the first time I really encountered the Thunderbirds in any significant fashion. And it's a long story, but I was really inspired by them as a mature fighter pilot, as a squadron commander. In fact, at the time when Brick asked me to come take a look at the Thunderbirds, I was the commander of the 59th Test and Evaluation Squadron. So the squadron had 10 of each fighter type. I had 10 A-10s, 10 F-35s, 10 F-22s, 10 F-16s, 10 F-15s, 10 F-15Es. So amazing job, right? Like the 59th is an incredible squadron. You get your hands on all of the fighter types in one place. Really, really great job. And I was surprised that the Thunderbirds right down the street, I mean, we were 2 hangars apart, were so incredibly inspiring once I got up close that it became something I wanted to do.
Wow. So let's talk about the process from when you started as a Thunderbird pilot. I know it's a 2-year run. Let's talk about everything that you did, like the day in the life on how your day ran.
Sure. So at that point, I was an F-35 pilot. So didn't know how to fly the F-16. I'd had a little bit of F-16 time from test pilot school, but certainly not enough to be proficient. So step one for me as a Thunderbird was to change airplanes. So I went to Holloman Air Force Base, which is where the F-16 flying training unit is, the FTU. And I learned how to fly the F-16 for the first time. And this is kind of a funny story because I came back. I was still the commander of the 59th, came back to my squadron now as an F-16 pilot instead of an F-35 pilot. I had a few months before it was time to go start Thunderbird training. All right. So if you can kind of picture this, I wasn't in command of the Thunderbirds yet. Brand new F-16 pilot, but in the most advanced fighter squadron ever. Like the 59th F-16 pilots have 4,000 hours. They're incredibly good weapons officers in that aircraft. And they were not easy on me. So when I said, hey, I'm now on the F-16 side of the house, I need to fly a little bit with you guys. They were like, great. We'll have you drop GBU-24s at night, which is a very complex weapon. Then they had me strafe at night, so shoot the live gun. And then they put me on a suppression of enemy air defense large force exercise with the whole joint force. And it was just, I'm very thankful for the intensity of that training program, but it was wild at the time. All right. So now fast forward, I'm an F-16 pilot. I now started training with Brick initially just in simulators to start memorizing that Thunderbird 1 role. Mm-hmm. And it is just a case study in adult learning. There is no way to just put in the flights and be good enough to do that job. You have to be curious enough to watch your predecessors' tapes over and over and over again, which I did. My 5-year-old Revan at the time would sit there in front of the TV with me, and I think he had the show memorized by the time I was able to draw it out. So first it was just art, learning how to draw the lines of the show to know what it's supposed to look like and memorize all the communication that goes on as you're flying that demonstration. Then you take that to a simulator, and I would try it. And Brick would just hammer me. He was the Thunderbird 1 prior to me, and he would just be like, absolutely not good enough. Like, go try again. So then I would go back and study more and more, and then come back and do the simulator again. And he'd be like, no. And then no matter how good I finally got at the sim, it was still so shocking the first time I strapped on the Thunderbird 1 airplane and now felt those wingmen right there, where you can see their noses out your peripheral vision. Even one wingman was overwhelming. You add in the administrative burden of having to get back and forth through Nellis's airspace while trying to maintain the Thunderbird role and the communication. It just blew my mind. And that went on for another couple of flights. But Cindy, you'd be amazed by the learning curve of the human brain. Like once you've acknowledged, like, this is my life now and I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
It turns out you can learn just about anything with enough repetition. And that's what I'm very thankful for Brick for putting me through that. So
And
that's,
I'm kind of bummed that I wasn't able to do that. But what I am doing is I'm sharing my love for aviation through everyone who comes on. And especially, I love all branches of the military, but especially Air Force and Navy. That is where my heart is 100%. And I mean, just hearing your story, I'm getting like a rush going, this is so amazing to be able to mark off that career bucket list. So when you guys are in maneuver and demonstration, what are the inches that you're apart? And how long do you have to do that training over and over again until you perfect that? Because you're so close together.
when you first start in the Thunderbirds, you are lots of feet apart. You don't quite measure it in miles, but it's far. So you're when we do those initial training maneuvers, we're in what's called loose route, which is still actually about as close as fingertip in the combat Air Force. So we start in a position that we're all sort of familiar with, and that route formation it's still a task, but man, when you put it through clover loops and converted formations while you're in the middle of maneuvers, it is still absolutely overwhelming. And for me, even, and certainly for the wingmen who are having to fly those positions through those maneuvers, I think there's really no way to prepare for it. The only way to do it is to do it, especially for them. For me, I can do the simulator. I can train. I can memorize my comm. There are things I can do. But for the wingmen, there is no prep other than memorizing your position. You just have to get out there and try it. And it, of course, goes horribly the first time. But it generates that feedback loop. Now you've seen it. Now you've seen what a mistake looks like. Now you start to work towards that ideal position. Always redefining the ideal. Hey, we want to be here. Right now we're here. We want to be here. All right, you asked about the number of inches. By the time you get to a very proficient team near the end of the year, you're getting down, we say 18 inches. That's kind of the public line. I can tell you, if you look at some of the Diamond Pass and Review pictures from 2023, 24, and certainly nowadays that this has continued to evolve, they are well within 18 inches between 2 and 3's wingtips. I would say closing on 7. They're very, very, very close. You can look at a missile rail, which is about 3 feet long, and then kind of measure from there eyeball wise. But I think what's important to understand is we don't start the year off by saying we're going to 10 inches right now. There's no you sort of hold those tight positions in reserve a little bit as boss and as Thunderbird 4, who's the Diamond's instructor pilot and the one that sort of assesses the team's progress. Because it's very important for all of us on the team to maintain an offense mindset, something where we feel like we're always moving forward. Complacency kills Thunderbirds. When you feel like you're good enough, when you feel like you've reached that ultimate position, is when you start being able to think about other things while you're flying. And we can't have that. Unfortunately, everything we do is on such a tight margin that you have to be fully engaged. And so anytime the Thunderbirds get proficient enough at, let's say, 24 inches, then we say, cool, let's redefine the position. Let's pick a feather that's closer to my fuselage under my wing. Let's add stickers underneath the wing to move it in even further. Let's continue to redefine that position to keep us in that challenging, in that always moving forward, ever being challenged mindset. I know that sounds weird, but it's important not to ever have that end state because you shouldn't reach it. It should be impossible every time you fly.
Well, let's talk about the different positions. So let's talk about the public affairs officer and also the maintainers, and then we'll go through each plane. Okay.
All right. We'll work backwards then. All right. So the public affairs officer is Thunderbird 12. And that position is, it's remarkable. The Thunderbird 12 position is the only squadron in the Air Force that has its own public affairs officer. And it's not just an officer, by the way. It's a team of 7 led by that officer, who's usually a captain, major, could be up to lieutenant colonel in some cases.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
That responsibility is enormous. You are the Air Force's brand. And I think what number 12 on my team was now Major Katie Toner, or Katie Butler. She went by Agent. So she was unbelievable. Her ability to play offense with public affairs is something I've never seen before in an officer that age. It wasn't stating the party line for her. It was, we are going to get out there and fight an information war against our adversaries that are trying to divide us. We're going to be the opposite. We're going to be the uniting force. We're going to fly the right people. We're going to send the right messages. She kicked influencers out because that was sending the wrong message, and went with hometown heroes instead. Mm-hmm. She made a whole movie too. Actually, there's a Hallmark movie that was made during her time on the team as well. So one Netflix movie, one Hallmark movie. I mean, her ability to bring this all together was mind-blowing. Largely the success of the team relied on that position.
Yeah, and I actually applied for the Hometown Hero program a few years ago, but last year with the government shutdown, now it's a little backwards now. So the person who won last year will actually win this year for Huntington Beach, and everyone at the public affairs office has been absolutely amazing. So
they're amazing. They're amazing people. It's a part of our Air Force that so few people understand, but so important in the information war that we're all in right now with our adversaries overseas. And so a lot of respect for them. I have exactly the same level of respect for Thunderbird 11. So for me, it was Bobby Gula, goes by Swag. He's a commander out at Langley right now. What a crazy job for our maintenance officer. So he's, not only responsible for the entire fleet of F-16s, not just the ones that we fly, but the ones back home going through phase and depot level maintenance and all the heavy maintenance. They do that too. In our hangar. Such a unique squadron. We had everything in one place. So your maintainers are there, your loaders are there, your C-17 experts are there, your show center people are there. But when you look at that maintenance problem, it is, can you maintain those jets on the road at a civilian airfield, no back shop support, no breaks, every single day is a work day through the weekend. And oh, by the way, you're working with whatever parts you thought to bring with you, and you're in a different location every 3 days. Mm-hmm. Just a completely unique problem. Very much the agile combat that the Air Force is trying to get after. Like Thunderbird 11 lives that every single day. So Swag, my Thunderbird 11 did something that I didn't know was possible, and he flew the perfect game. So we never lost. Not just we always talk in our intro about how the Thunderbirds have never lost a show to maintenance, meaning somebody flew in every show. Yeah. But with Swag, we never lost a line. Every single one of our shows that he provided all of the jets for it. We were able to get all the jets airborne every single time. It's never been done. So he was that good, and he was able to do that deployed. They were doing really creative things. Engine changes in a third of the time expected, stuff like that. All right, so that's 11. Moving on to Thunderbird 10. So that was now Major Randy Winther. She was my executive officer. So she basically was the commander of the squadron while I was flying twice a day. So she, and then before that, it was Jinx Moorcamp, who handed that off. So that was my break between the 2 years. Both of them were unbelievable officers. And I'll focus for a second on Randy. We called her Smoke, my second year, because that's the one job on the Thunderbirds that doesn't have a AFSC requirement, meaning you can do that job from any of the jobs in the Air Force. And she really blazed that trail because she was not a career executive officer or personnelist like you would expect. She's actually a career operational analyst, which means her expertise is in math and numbers and data analysis. Well, we hired her to be the executive officer because she was just that good of a human being and that good at taking on those responsibilities and being proactive and executing those. So I give her all the credit for everything good that happened while I was commander of that team. And she really takes that lift, that commander role, while Thunderbird 1 spends most of the time in the leader of the demonstration role. And then moving up the chain to number 9, that was our doctor. So Major Travis Grindstaff, we called Angry, smiliest person you'll ever meet in your life. It's just the kindest man, full-time medical doctor But on the Thunderbirds, you never just have one job. So even though he was,
although his call sign is angry,
his call sign's angry. It's an irony thing. I hope you get to meet him. He's like, he's just such a great human being. This is the Thunderbirds in a nutshell. He represents it. You are a full-time medical doctor. You're responsible for 31 different job types worth of medical attention, 150 people at any given time on the road. You're a doctor, right? Like, this is a high level of achievement. And yet on the Thunderbirds, you maintain that giving posture. So there was no job too small for him. He would run our shine. So he was the one out at Show Center with the giant light beam, pointing at the jets to make sure that I knew where Show Center was, sweating it out in the middle of Show Center in front of the crowd with a giant light gun. And then he would go and save somebody's life right after that. So, everybody on the team has two jobs. So those are the positions that are not pilots on the team. And I hope I've made the point that they are, I would say, like somewhere between as valuable and far, far, far more valuable than the pilots on the team because of their capabilities. They're just amazing people.
Well, I want to talk real quick about the maintainers, because actually coming up in May is Aviation Technician Day. And I always like to acknowledge, I have a friend who was an F-14 maintainer, and he'll come on the podcast and talk about that. The maintainers are so important. And at the end of the show, we'll kind of cover that again, because I think that is, for the entire industry of aviation, super important to really appreciate our maintainers. Okay, let's go up the line.
Okay, so now we're on Thunderbird 8. All right, so now we're getting into the 8. Number 1 through 8 are pilots. They are F-16 pilots. A lot of people miss that. They think that 1 through 6 are the pilots, and that's true. Those are the demonstration pilots, but 7 and 8 are also both F-16 pilots, and that's very necessary. So number 8, where the crowd sees number 8, is in the narrator role. And number 8 that's a big job. You have to memorize our entire 45-minute script, and you are basically the MC for the show. So you're the personality that gives it life. You're the one that's coordinating the music with your team of enlisted operators that are running duty. So this is big. It's dynamic, right? You're the showman. You're the one they're all watching. As most people know, I had Primo my first year and Simmer my second year.
I think Primo was in the movie, right?
Primo was, because by the time we got to movie time, Primo was Thunderbird 3. So that number 8 job is really interesting. And this was a very cool change that Brick made to the team. It used to be that when you joined as 8, you were the narrator and you were the advanced pilot, meaning you were the first one to get to a new airfield. You had planned and coordinated the whole air show in advance. You arrive first, one day early, make sure everything's okay. And you did that job for 2 years. And that was it. You were hired as 8, you left as 8, already a really big job. Because of Brick's changes, that number 8 job now flows into the demonstration. So second year, you're either 6, like the new solo, or you're 3, the new diamond member. And then your third year, you do a third year, so you can become the instructor solo or the diamond instructor. So that flow is complicated, but well worth it, in my opinion, watching Primo and Simmer go through that. They really showed that this works. Yeah. But I want to try to characterize this. So when a fighter squadron goes to red flag, for example, deploys from their home base, let's call it Seymour out at North Carolina, to red flag at Nellis, they send a team of several people, like up to 10 people, a week in advance of the squadron's arrival to spend all day, every day, building their nest, making sure that everything's ready for the arrival of that fighter squadron. So fighter squadron, let's call it 60 people, is going to show up. They send about 5 to 10 in advance, and they spend a whole week in advance. Contrast that with what Thunderbird 8 has to do. They get 1 day, and they have one person and their crew chief in the back. So they take their 2-seat F-16 1 day in advance to a civilian airfield that has no Air Force capabilities, lands, figures it all out, and then 24 hours later, the entire Thunderbird team shows up of 130 people in a C-17 with fighter jets, and it all has to be coordinated in advance. And the next day, we're expected to fly twice, one of which is almost always a full air show, whether we call it that or not. So huge job for Thunderbird 8 and not well understood. I don't think they get nearly the credit they deserve for the lift that they take on.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because that really means the world to me to get that out there and let my audience know. Okay, let's talk next.
All right, number 7. Number 7 is second in command for the squadron. That's the primary job. So it's in the Air Force we call it the director of operations. That's number 2 in a squadron. Navy will call that an XO. But the number 2 in the squadron is the director of operations. So Thunderbird 7 is that person. So now we're talking a pre-senior person. It is a lieutenant colonel position. It's someone who's very experienced, who's on their way to squadron command next. And so for me, it was Slinga and then Flash, 2 absolute rock stars. And you can think of Thunderbird 8 as working the on-ground logistics. What is this air show going to look like? Are we controlled? Are we looking good? Thunderbird 7, everything else. So now we're talking about what is on that C-17, who's moving it. Oh, by the way, who is providing that airlift? Is it C-130s? Is it a 1 C-17? What's the schedule look like? Where's the tanker? Who's coordinating all this? That's him. That's the DO. So he is responsible for every single thing that goes on in that squadron from a logistics, readiness, and operations perspective. And while he can delegate some of that out, he owns it. So if something goes wrong, that's on the director of operations. That's true across any squadron. But in addition to that, he flies our chase ships. So when you see the photo chase mission flying behind the Delta or the hometown hero flyers, that is one of those 2 people, 7 or 8. So it's this whole other job they have to wrap their minds around. Wow. They have to know the demo. They can't just show up and fly in formation with a clover loop opener or a Delta roll. They have to know the show really, really well to be able to fly that loose chase position. So add that to the list, right? So you've got all the operations, you've got all the control of the airfield, you've got all the logistics, you're in command of everybody in the squadron except me. And oh, by the way, you have to fly well enough to be able to chase the demo while you have a national reporter sitting, 6 feet behind you in the F-16 watching the whole thing. It's a pretty high stress job. Yeah. I don't know how those guys do it. Yeah. So that's 7. All right. Now you get into 1 through 6. And while we jokingly refer to us as the show ponies, the ones that take all that support from our enlisted corps, from our 31 job types and from those officers I just named and put it all together into us, right? Now the show ponies go out and do things. But I don't want to undersell it. It's really hard. I think every Thunderbird pilot would tell you it's the hardest thing they've ever done in their life. I will be one of the people that says that. And I did everything else. So I did weapons school. I did test pilot school. I've done a lot in the Air Force, and I've never been challenged like I have been as Thunderbird 1. And it's because of the things you don't think about. So yes, after 200 sorties, after 4 straight months of 2-a-days every day, no weekends, no breaks, yes, at some point you can do it. You can't do it perfectly, and you're always striving to do it perfectly, and then you hit the road and reality hits. Your references have changed. You're at a different density altitude. The mountains you've trained against are not there anymore. Instead, you've got high humidity. You've got missing references over oceans. Oh, by the way, let's add in some weather. Let's add in some logistics challenges, some fuel constraints, some runways that are too short to land on. All of these things are dealt with live, which is why all of the support that those other members of the team give are actually what makes it all possible. Because you have one job as a demo pilot, and that is to fly that demo and to do it at the world-class level and be the best, be the beacon of excellence for all of humanity. That is your job. And so those young pilots that join this team, usually around year 10 in their careers, that's about how old these guys are when they join as the youngest wingmen. They are fully saturated at all times. So number 6 and number 5 are our solos, and they are.
Baby. Woo!
Yep.
And that's
I can see your sides you're on. Yep.
Really quick, I want to give a shout out to my friend Rachel. So she came out to Huntington Beach in 24 and her very first air show. And what did she do? She has her camera out there and she got the sneak pass. I'm like, girl, I never get the sneak pass. I always say, oh, it's coming from behind or it's from the side. And so I just want to do a shout out to her since she's watching today. But that was a pretty epic experience. Very first air show and very first sneak pass. Like, how are you getting the sneak pass? So let's talk about the sneak pass and the opposing solo.
Yeah. So the solos, both solos have a really high level of responsibility. If I had to summarize them as a whole, they are the demonstrators of the max performance of these Air Force aircraft. Mm-hmm. Max G, tightest turn radius, loudest, closest, fastest, everything turned up to 10. That's what the solos are there to show you. And I think they get credit for that. People understand that about the solos. They have a lot of respect for 5 and 6 because of that part of the show. The part I don't think they understand, the general audience, I don't think they understand quite as well, is that those same solos then have to reform to the Delta. And they have to fly formation just like the Diamond. They grab onto the edge. And oh, by the way, that's harder because instead of being right next to me where I'm the only thing moving, they are one layer out where they're having to react to 2 and 3's movements as well. And they fly some pretty crazy positions, like the 5-car loop where we make like a 5 and fly through a loop. Like there's a solo in there, who just got off of flying single ship as fast and hard as possible, and then knocked themselves into formation to do this insane maneuver. So their ability to convert from I'm on my own and I'm max performing with utmost precision to, oh gosh, I have to join this team now and fly formation, and everyone's watching and they can all tell when you're out of position. Really hard job. So 6, I can only imagine the shock of a Thunderbird 6 who joins the team for their first year and is thrust into this role, having to go back and forth between the solo move and the formation move. And then when you're in your second year as Thunderbird 5, everything just gets harder because now you have the whole number 6 show that you memorized last year. You have to learn your own show now as Thunderbird 5, and it's different. Their maneuvers are different. Wow. And you're the instructor for number 6.
For the 2 years, so the position changes. Wow.
It's not the same. We really believe it's important to flow those instructors upward so that they have experience with the new thing while they're learning their new thing. And I'll talk philosophy for a little bit. This was a brilliant move out of Brick, Colonel Caldwell, my predecessor. So his idea of flowing forward like that does a couple things. One, it ensures that the instructor always knows how to fly the position of their student. Mm-hmm. So number 5 knows how to fly 6's position, so they have credibility. They know that they're telling the truth when they instruct them on how to do this. But the second thing, and I think the real advantage, is that every team, every year, 2022, 23, 24, everyone's learning something new together. No one is like, the king who doesn't have to learn anything or the queen who doesn't have to learn anything and who's just throwing spears and critiquing the new guys. It's not like that. Everybody's learning something new. Number 5 was 6 last year, but now they're learning 5. It's a totally different position and a totally different way of flying, and different side and a different position in the hits. And so
that's pretty epic. I really do love that.
Yes, we grow as a team.
Pretty epic, yeah. Number 4.
Yeah, I see.
Steven Del Bagno.
Yes. So, yeah, please, Cindy, go.
So I met his parents a few years ago, actually, when I started the podcast, and Joseph was one of my second or third interviews, because I had the F-14 pilot was my first interview, and they're like family now. Seriously, the De Bagnos are actually just amazing, and I'm a part of their fundraiser every year. And what Cajun did was so amazing. And do you have these memorized?
I do not have those memorized.
So we have the 5 Ps. Find your passion, your purpose, be personable, be persistent, and prosper, AKA that's going to pay off. So definitely check this out. If you want a sticker, just let me know. I could get you a sticker from Joseph. I actually have one of these on the back of my truck. And just such an amazing aviator. Let's talk about what Cajun meant to you. Did you guys serve? You didn't serve in the same at the same time, but you guys knew each other.
Yeah.
from being in the Air Force.
Yeah. So I mean, he is just the embodiment of a good human being, and I really like the ethos that when we were going through our kind of re-identification of what the Thunderbirds meant through Brick's era, my era, and continue to do so. He was that representation, that kind of selfless giving human being, the one that wasn't out there trying to suck the life out of the Thunderbirds to build a personal brand. Quite the opposite. The one that was trying to pour himself into building the Thunderbirds brand. He consistently talked about the other people on the team. If you interviewed Cajun, you didn't hear about Cajun. You heard about everyone around him that was building him up.
Yes.
That tells you so much about who a person is, and he embodied that. And I wish I had gotten to serve in the same squadron with him, but I can tell you he was an icon that we all looked up to. Chic as well, you know, just really important. I'll say this: the single best thing about the Netflix documentary is his story, is the role that his parents play. The most moving moment of my life by far was sitting next to those two in a theater watching the premiere, and getting to see the credit that the movie, that Netflix, nobody controls Netflix. This crew, they could have made any story they wanted. They could have made a movie about jets. They could have made another Top Gun. They could have told any story. They could have made it like The Bachelor and told it about the applicant pool and how you apply to be a Thunderbird, and all of that would have worked. And arguably, all of it, could have made for a louder movie, right? But instead, they focused on the human side, and you can't tell the human side of the Thunderbirds without telling Cajun's story. And so, to see that they gravitated towards that, no one told them to do that. No one pointed them in that direction. They identified that as a pivotal moment in this team's history, and went and interviewed, Cajun's mom and dad, and got the truth of how much of a giving person he was, and how much of a giving person those two were.
Yes,
and I'll tell you, it's by far the most inspiring part of the movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it just for that. It
was hard for me to get through it, truthfully, but that's why I reached out to you, because I'm just so very grateful of all the amazing things you said about Cajun. I mean, it really warmed my heart on how amazing you were in that movie. And do a shout out to the movie again.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. The Netflix movie called Air Force Elite Thunderbirds, it just got renewed indefinitely, by the way. So it'll be on Netflix platform for the rest of history. It's very easy to find. If you type the letter A in your search, it'll pop up as one of the first hits. And it is a people story. And I think that's important. There have been a lot of jet stories. There have been a lot of military stories. There have been a lot of stories about how awesome everybody is. And this is not that. This is the truth behind the scenes of how challenging it is to be a part of an elite organization that's charged with being the best of humanity while being stressed out constantly by the difficulty of that situation. And I think, like I said, Cindy, the best part of it, the part that will change who you are and what you think of when you think of self-sacrifice in the name of public service, is Cajun's story.
And I'll be real with you. My very first episode with Joe, I barely got through it. I was so emotional because I have so much love for the Air Force, and because that was, like I said, my first love into aviation. And just hearing the story, it's a very sad story on what happened during his maneuvers, but he is definitely our angel from above. Aim high, and I'm just so very grateful to, be supporting their organization and doing whatever I can to get more people, to get that discovery flight. And so, if you know any young person who wants to get on a discovery flight, you definitely need to think of Cajun's Aviation Dream. Is there anything you would like to say about the organization?
Yeah, I believe in it. It's hosted by great people who are truly trying to do something bigger than themselves for a greater purpose and inspire our youth in America to strive for something bigger than themselves, which is very, very special given what Cindy and Joe have been through.
And I'm actually going to be scheduling a discovery flight at the prime age of 61. So I'm pretty excited to finally mark that off my bucket list.
Outstanding.
So when I do aviation, I do a little longer. Yeah, so we usually go to 45 minutes to an hour. Do you still have 50 more minutes, or you want to pop off?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Whatever you need.
So
After
let's
that
talk
mug,
about,
Cindy.
yeah, recruitment. Let's talk about recruitment.
Okay. Yeah.
Somebody wants to be in the Air Force. What's the whole process, and how can they go about that?
Yeah, lots of ways. And I'll tell you, like, for those listening, it is not easy to wrap your mind around. Bear with me. I'll tell you my own story. So I grew up in Houston with 2 Canadian parents, and not one of them had a clue how to join the U.S. military, nor were they that interested in me doing that. So here's what I knew. 18-year-old me knew, okay, I can either go to the Air Force Academy, which sounds hard, or I don't get to be in the Air Force, or I can enlist. That's what I thought. Okay, none of that's true. So the Air Force Academy is extremely special. It is a magical place, and it will make you an incredible officer. But it is only one of 3 different ways to commission as an officer and ultimately fly in the Air Force if that's your dream. So the Air Force Academy is one way, very difficult to get into. Very high ratio of pilots come out of the Air Force Academy, so I think that's important to know. It's a great way to get into flying. The second way is ROTC, and I am not talking about junior ROTC, which your high schools have. That is actually not affiliated with the Air Force. ROTC is affiliated with the Air Force and the Navy and the Army, of course. And that is up to a full scholarship for any university. I went to Yale University. I was paid for 100% by the U.S. Air Force, everything, room and board, academics, books, even got a stipend. And for that, I owed 4 years of service when I was done. Now I'm at year 21 right now. And I hope I get to do 20 more, because it is the best job ever. And I think it's important to know, but even if it's the worst job ever, full ride to any university in the United States for 4 years. And it's not like it's 4 years of like slavery. It's a fully paid job. It's an amazing job, and the Air Force is going to make you into a great person. So well worth it, and something I did not understand as a kid in high school. Very glad I ran into somebody who was able to break that barrier down and explain that to me. All right, third way is called OTS. Now, let's say you miss the Air Force Academy, you miss college, but you graduate from college, but not with the ROTC program, so you paid for it yourself. And now you decide later in life, I want to go into the Air Force and fly. You can still do that. That's OTS. And that is a 12-week course. That's kind of a crash course in how to be an officer. You have to have a degree to do that. Then you go through OTS, and then you commission as a second lieutenant. So all 3 of those journeys lead to second lieutenant in the Air Force, where you compete for a pilot slot, and then your career is absolutely no different from that point forward, no matter which commissioning source got you in there. All right, so that's for the officers looking to be engineers, lawyers, doctors, fly planes, whatever you want to do in the Air Force. Lots of officer jobs, pretty much any job you can think of exists in our military somewhere. All right, but there's this whole other world, and that's the enlisted force. And that is a very different thing. For that one, you don't have to even think about college. Now, it's great to do that, but if you don't want to do the college gig, you can still go into the Air Force and enlist straight into it. And you can find local recruiters by just Googling it, or looking around your town. You'll find them everywhere. And those enlisted recruiters know what they're talking about, and they'll give you testing to try to align you to a career path that makes the most sense. And they'll listen to what you're interested in, whether that be a maintainer, whether that be a technician of some kind, whether that be a tower operator or a radar controller. Millions of career fields in our enlisted corps. And man, it is an incredible way to go and get to go to work very early in life, and retire very comfortably, very, very early in life. Seriously, you could be 39 years old and be complete with a 20-year military career and be retired at 39. A lot of people don't think of that. Financial incentive. It's not the primary incentive to go into the military, for sure. Shouldn't be. However, let's all admit that there's a component of that matters. There's a component of that matters. And if you can build some security for yourself financially while exploring these incredible opportunities, it leads to a good life. So I know, Cindy, that was a long time on how to get into the Air Force, but But
Oh,
I
no,
think
that's
it's fun
fine.
because I didn't know. When I was a kid, I didn't know. I was just very lucky. I ran into somebody who was able to tell me.
I want to do a big shout out to Nathan, aka Sheik. He wrote a beautiful letter that I use for a couple air shows, and now I have a press pass to appear with the team and interview the team. So I'm super excited. So thank you so much, Nathan. When you're listening to this, and of course, I'm curious. Do they have any tours there at Nellis for an aviation geek like myself, or how does that work?
No, so the Thunderbirds have a museum.
Oh,
And so the museum is our hangar, by the way. So it's pretty up close and personal. And if you have to get on Nellis Air Force Base, the museum's open from 9 to 3 every weekday. And it has a lot of history in it. And our VIP room is right there. It's constantly playing a movie, and it's got a lot of kind of relics from the past teams, as well as some current events from the current team. So you'll see all their pictures on the wall. And that's one of the things that you'll appreciate when you walk into that hangar. And when you walk into that museum, two things that I took away from it when I walked in the first time. The first one is, oh, wow, there are only 12 Thunderbird officers. Something I didn't understand. I think as a kid, I thought the Air Force just grabbed whoever was available to fly, the Houston Air Show. But no, those are the only humans on Earth capable of flying those maneuvers. And that is their entire life, is for those 2 years. That is what they do. So that you'll pull that out of seeing those pictures on the wall. And the second thing is the hangar looks really good. It is in really good shape. And it's not because they have unlimited money and funding, quite the opposite. We're struggling all the time, to make these air shows happen. It's because of pride. It's because despite the fact that the Thunderbird hangar is the oldest hangar on Nellis Air Force Base, all the way back to the 1960s. Despite that fact, it's the oldest hangar on base. And despite the fact that we're spending all of our money on the road and not at home, we polish the floor every day. We make sure that we keep that place looking like a representation of American excellence every day. It's a people effort, and it works. And it's a real lesson for anyone who visits, that it's not about, the latest, greatest, best funded thing. It's about the effort you put into it. The pride you put into something is what makes it great.
And how do you get on base for that? Do I need to go to the public affairs officer to set up that?
You would have to call if you don't have access. A lot of people do have access either via civilian or retirement credentials to see the Thunderbirds hangar, but you can't just drive onto an active Air Force base. Somebody has to authorize that. Public affairs can get you on.
Very nice. Okay, we're closing out here. And so one of the questions I want to talk about real quick, just really shortly, the importance of the maintainers.
It's everything.
Yes.
The level of trust that we have in our maintainers is absolute. So when we talk about blind trust, let me tell you how much of a blind trust we have in these maintainers. When I start Thunderbird 1, when I get in that airplane and start that airplane, I do not pre-flight. I march out staring straight ahead in front of the crowd. I turn, I put my G suit on, I climb the ladder, I sit in the cockpit, and I blindly start the jet. Literally, it's important to us that our heads stay caged completely forward so that you don't see movement. If we were all moving around in the cockpit and looking at our switches, that would be obvious to the crowd. So we cage straight forward. Our hand motions are exactly matched to one another. We are starting that aircraft assuming blindly that the switches are in the perfect position. That's a lot of switches, by the way, and that's a lot of trust in our maintainers, and they get it right every time. Well, that all goes back to the culture that Thunderbird 11 has to create with his maintainers. You can't miss. You can't miss. You miss a switch, it could have literally lethal consequences. There are some switches in the F-16 that if I do a loop on takeoff and they are in the wrong position, it's going to kill us. And we have that level of faith with those maintainers. And to do that, they are working 24 hours a day. So my respect for those guys cannot be overstated. My trust in them cannot be overstated. And just like us, they cycle through. It's not like they were born with a red, white, and blue diaper and became a Thunderbird maintainer on the show line, right? They had to earn that from the day they applied for the team to the day they ended up marching in front of the crowd and showing the colors of the United States.
So my last question, how do you celebrate every day?
With the kids. I think
I love the family photos. I just love it.
Yeah, it's important to me. When we work is work, and work is important. And I won't be the person that tells you like, hey, we should all quit our jobs and spend 100% of our time with our kids. I would love to do that. It would be better for me. It would make me happier.
Yeah.
But it's important for our kids to see us represent something bigger than ourselves. And I believe in that. I really believe that the kids need to see us as parents focusing and balancing life and working towards something that means something, some sort of service. That can be in the civilian world, that can be in the military world, doesn't matter what it is, but it needs to be a purpose greater than you. That's the example you've got to set for your kids. That's my belief. And so I celebrate that at the end of every day by coming home and giving them 100% of the remainder of the day. However long that may be, no phones, no distractions. It is all about them and whatever they want to do. And man, it's cool to watch them grow up. They're 10 and 8 now. Both of them are better musicians than I'll ever be. One's a guitarist and the other one's a drummer, and like they play like heavy metal. I mean, really well. Like they're really good.
Yeah, they can do my intro video.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Wow.
so watching them grow, that's my celebration. Really, like it's what fills the bucket back up again to then go out and get after it at work and continue giving.
Well, I celebrate every day by sending at least 5 to 10 texts a day, letting people know I love them, I'm grateful for them, just because. I had a friend who just passed away a few months ago, and even when we're busy as heck, we would just say, "Hey, what you doing, girl? What are you doing? Oh, I got a meeting, but I want to let you know that I appreciate you, and tell me what the best part about you today is." So we would do that like once or twice a week. And so that's how I celebrate. I go to the National Day calendar. Matter of fact, if you're watching this podcast and you subscribe, you comment, and you share, I'm going to give you a very special aviation gift as well as a National Day calendar. So it's just a reason for you to celebrate every day. Matter of fact, coming up in November, if you wanted to come on again, it's my 5-year anniversary of the show. It's Aviation History Month, and it's also National Gratitude Month. And of course, my biggest love is celebrating those in military. And when I see either someone that's in the military or someone that's a veteran, I always say, thank you for your service. And if it's a Vietnam veteran, if they have their hat, or a Korean hat, I will say, thank you, sir, for serving, and thank you for coming home. So just the littlest things like that. And of course, those aviation mugs I love sending to my aviators to make their day a little bit better. Because at the end of the day, we don't know our last day of breath. So go out and make a difference. Pay it forward in your community. Do things in your community. Find a local nonprofit. There's Cajun's Aviation Dream. Please check the show notes and connect with them. If you have a young person who wants to learn how to fly, make that aviation dream come true. It's so, so important. Anything else that you would like to close on before we close the show?
I'm going to say it right back to you. You say thank you for your service to veterans and those who served. And I believe in that. It is a great job. But I also have to say it back because about 0.5% of Americans will get a chance to serve in the military. That's the stat these days. It's about 99.5% who won't get to serve. Importantly, that's not always a choice, right? You may not have, you may be in a wheelchair. You may not have the ability to serve for some reason or another, but service is not a uniform. It's not a face. It's not a job type. It's an attitude. It's this, if you can be the kind of person who innovates, creates, drives America forward in whatever way you're passionate about, if you're chasing your passion, just like you are, Cindy, with this podcast and with everything you've done, if you are chasing your passion, well, that's what fuels the rest of us. That's what fuels those of us that are in uniform. And we do it for you, but you drive us forward. You are America. The 99.5% who don't get to serve in uniform, they're still serving. And so I'll say right back to you, thank you for your service and for everything you've done for us.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I'm so excited to be, hanging out with the team here. A couple air shows coming up. Yeah, so Huntington Beach Air Show, also Miramar. Well, Miramar is Navy, but at Huntington Beach, I'll get to meet the U.S. Thunderbirds, and also Wings Over Houston. I'm super stoked that I'm in the interview process for that too. So probably within a couple weeks, I'll know if I get the media pass. So it's just for me, who loves airplanes, and I'm sad that I can't learn to fly and have it as a career. But what I'm doing for yourself and everybody in the military who's in aviation, to share your story, that just means so much to me. It's just in my heart, very deeply in my heart. So for you to come on today and make the time, take an hour away from your family time, it's just absolutely epic. So thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you. And thank you for your service.
Thank you for even thinking of me.
And did you want to hang out a few minutes after the show, or you have to head out?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to close the show, and I'll be right back. So this is Cindy and Justin. Make sure you go to Bucket List Coach Web Show Live. You're going to subscribe, comment, and share. I have an aviation gift for one winner that I'm picking the end of the month, and also a National Day calendar. Go out and find all these air shows to create those memories. And there's one thing that's called world schooling. So take your kids and experience the world, where it's at a aviation show, which I can help if you want to travel to EAA AirVenture next year. I do a lot of aviation vacations as well. And definitely look for a Justin Astro Elliott. You can find him all over YouTube and learn more about his story. He's a powerful aviator, and we're so glad that he made the time today.
Thanks, Cindy.